Training camp is officially underway, and there are some players that are really taking a step forward going into the 2025 season. Today, Jeff Bell and I, we identified some of the biggest risers through the first week of training camp. Jeff, kind of a open-ended question here, but how much weight are you willing to put into these early training camp reports?
I want to say not a lot because I want to rely on the work that we did leading up to this. But then at the same time, this is our first real look at a lot of new coaches, new personnel, who is running with what groupings. So this is really our first opportunity. And so I mean, me, I'm the type that I will flip pretty quickly on if I feel like something is heading in the wrong direction. I don't really wait around for that for kind of like have conviction in my take. Like, I don't really believe that game. I believe in, let's see what I'm seeing right now and everything that's coming out. And so I do put a decent amount of weight on it.
And I don't think there's any way to say that you can clearly decipher what is smoke and what is real. It's just kind of a feel that you have from living through a lot of training camps and paying attention and getting a read on what you should put weight in, what you shouldn't put weight in. Obviously, injuries are huge, and we're starting to get some injuries already that are giving us a clearer picture of what these depth charts could potentially look like. But I think you make a really good point too, who is playing with what personnel groupings. If we're hearing consistently, this guy's with the ones, this guy's with the ones, this guy's with the ones, that's not something to ignore. There's a reason that they're out there with that personnel group. So let's go ahead and dive in. And I think the first of all, what I want to say too, we kind of set this up. We're going to talk with some of the more obvious names and then just get progressively deeper and deeper and deeper. So don't laugh at us for starting with Anthony Richardson, a guy that you probably know is having a good camp, but we will have some gems later on in the show. But Anthony Richardson, I think maybe we were just a little bit too early to write him off. We got this quote from Carly Ursay Gordon, who is Jim Ursay's daughter, and she said, "Where he is in his career and in his deal as a rookie, we still have time. He still has a lot left to prove." And we're hearing kind of what you'd expect about Anthony Richardson. He's been inconsistent, but we're also hearing that he's outperforming Daniel Jones. So, Jeff, had you and I talked a month ago, I think I would have said there was about a 10% chance of Anthony Richardson being the week one starter. Now, with what we're hearing out of Indianapolis, I'm saying that's probably closer to 60, maybe even 70% that he's the week one starter.
Yeah, and I do want to make a quick point on how I view some of this information that's coming out, because it reminds me of the rookie process a little bit. And when we get into the rookie guide, I like to populate, this is the entire population of players that we should be looking at. And as we go through the different gates, you're just peeling guys off and you're saying it's not going to be them. And so I feel like instead of using training camp as like a positive confirmation on, I already like this guy, hearing good things, it's more just take these guys off my board. I'm not touching these guys. And I think that that's a better way to take it and just kind of narrow it down, because it just opens up more possibilities for you. But on to Anthony Richardson. It reminds me kind of like Dwight Howard, where Dwight Howard came in and he's just this very raw player. And he was very good at the thing that Dwight Howard could do at rebounding, blocking shots. Right. But I think with Anthony Richardson, it's the type of thing of when he's not on the field, it's very good to think about the struggles in the passing game, or very easy to think about the struggles in the passing game and all these things of, well, look at that passing percentage, these things. And then you can see him out on the field in pads and you're like, oh, well, that guy's built very, very different than the rest of our guys. And we absolutely should see if this athletic freak can figure some things out, because him figuring things out makes things completely different for if Daniel Jones were to be the quarterback or just our franchise as a whole. And I think we always should have been operating with that mindset. And I do think that when it's out of sight, out of mind, we're not seeing them on the field. We're looking at historically low passing percentage and thinking, well, if they want to have a more efficient offense, then maybe it seemed like it would be Daniel Jones. And then again, some dudes just show up bigger, stronger, faster. And you want to, you took him 4th overall in the draft. You want to see if you can figure this out. And so I think that that's where we're at in this point.
And I think he's one of the most important players to get a read on, because we know, if he's not playing, obviously there's no use in having Anthony Richardson on your team. But if he is playing, you're looking at a top 5, top 8 weekly upside every time he steps on the field, cut from the same cloth as a guy like Justin Fields, where there might not be a lot of volume. There might be some interceptions. There might be some sacks. There might be some errant throws. But if he's able to plow into the end zone 3 times or rush for 120 yards, it doesn't really matter what he's doing through the air. So this is one that I'm playing close attention to. I hadn't drafted any Anthony Richardson in my early drafts. I don't know about you, Jeff. I've got about 100 best ball drafts under my belt at this point now. We are deep in the weeds, really out there cranking teams out. Daniel Jones was a guy that I was taking late to pair up with my Tyler Warrens and my Josh Downses and my Michael Pittmans. But at this point now, I kind of feel like I've got a little bit of FOMO, the fear of missing out with Anthony Richardson, and I've started sprinkling him in. We just did a draft earlier today on Drafters with Alfredo Brown, and 14th round Anthony Richardson got him as my QB3. It was a draft where we had kind of punted on quarterback. We had Trevor Lawrence and Cam Ward were our quarterbacks. So we came in with Anthony Richardson as a QB3. And if he ends up playing 17 games, I mean, in a best ball format, I would guess with that quarterback room, 14 of those 17 games are probably going Anthony Richardson's way. So one that we're going to be paying close attention to, because if he's a starter, we are just way off on our rankings and dynasty evaluation, where he was going for, a late second, early third round pick just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, if you ever want anybody to call Justin Fields a great passer, just compare him to Anthony Richardson. And I got blown up the other day about making that comparison on the great platform of Twitter. And yeah, I got so many people told me that Justin Fields is such a better passer. And it's like, this is the first time in your life you probably typed that Justin Fields is a good passer. So there we go.
Well, at least since his days in college.
But I think, yeah, when you're really looking at it, a game theory play, I've liked to have 3 quarterbacks in my best ball builds, because I just think that there's so much value in waiting in quarterback. And I have pivoted to grabbing Richardson as that third quarterback. Prior to kind of the positive news here, I was wanting to grab that third quarterback before we hit that tier. But you're looking at him as a guy that, if he's out there, great shot to be the quarterback one in whatever week it might be. And if you get into the playoff weeks, then he's got as much upside as the guys that went at the very top of the draft. And so the way that he is structured, you can wait till the very end, still walk out with the same upside, maybe as somebody that used a second or third round pick on Josh Allen, and you're kind of insulated from any risk on there. So I think it's a great value right now.
Come for the dynasty player takes and stay for the best ball game theory. Let's stick in Indianapolis.
We should talk about him in dynasty, though, because the other part of that is there were very real conversations last summer about people having him as their 101 in dynasty superflex rankings. And so if he puts it together for this year, that's what you're looking at. And the value that you can grab off that, I mean, if you're out here and maybe your quarterback 2 is a lower floor type of a guy, or maybe it's just you've got questions in general about your quarterback situation, it's worthwhile to check in on him, because if he does deliver that over the course of the season, I don't know if people would be willing to take him in the first round next year in startups, but definitely probably second and third round conversation in startups if he puts together a great year.
And I'm looking right now, I mean, Keep Trade Cut is going to lag a little bit. It's not going to be able to jump quite as quickly to the news as other people would. But right now, it's saying he's valued at a mid-second. I'd be more than happy to trade away a second-round pick for Anthony Richardson. I think with this recent buzz, though, you probably can't do that, especially in Superflex leagues. People are probably going to want to squeeze out a projected late first. And I think that's probably where I would draw the line. Given a second-round pick feels like a decent investment, but I think that window is starting to close quickly. Like I said, a couple of months ago, you could have gotten Anthony Richardson for a third. Now he's moving up to a second, and I think that's kind of my cutoff point. I'd be scared about buying in as he is spiking throughout training camp. So I think if you've got him, hold for now. I don't think that there's any benefit in selling, but as his price continues to go up, I think it does make it a little bit tougher to justify buying him. But I want to stay in Indianapolis because we have another first round pick in Indianapolis who is making a ton of noise right now. Tyler Warren, who we know is a very creative player with how they can get the ball to him, how he was used at Penn State. Now we're hearing the same thing in Indianapolis, getting goal line touches, carries as a fullback. They said that he's been lining up as a wide receiver and a tight end. This drumbeat started in OTAs and has just been getting louder and louder and louder. I'm going to read 2 quotes to you here, both from our friends over at Coach Speak Index. Greg Branos pulled these and shared them on Twitter today. This is from offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter. He said, "We're putting a lot on Tyler Warren's plate. I think he's going to be a very versatile piece for us. We're going to try a bunch of different stuff with him, give him a bunch of shots at a bunch of different aspects of playing." And then Shane Steichen said, "Tyler Warren has been really solid. He just has a great feel for the game, great hands, understands football. I think he's going to make a good impact for us this year." So, Jeff, you and I were talking about it during rookie draft season. that we were looking at Tyler Warren as a top 5, top 6, top 7 pick in rookie drafts, but he was consistently falling into the late first round. Looking now, I mean, I have been moving him up in my redraft rankings. He is now my tight end 9 in redraft, and it still feels like that isn't encompassing the potential ceiling here. I don't want to make the comp to Brock Bowers because that sounds lazy, but we just saw last year what a very versatile tight end can do. A guy that gets moved all over the formation, that becomes the focal point of the offense. I don't think he's going to have a historically great season the way that Brock Bowers did. But after this season, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we are looking at Tyler Warren in that same tier in Dynasty with Brock Bowers and Trey McBride.
Yeah, and I've got for my redraft rankings right now, I just kind of did a big sweep last night of going through my projections based upon the news that we've gotten for a week so far. I got Tyler Warren as my tight end 5 in redraft
Whew.
right now. And a
So
big
ahead
part
of
of that,
Kelsey and Hawkinson and Laporta, I'm assuming.
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is because when you start to talk about the rush game usage, if
Yep.
that's real, then it doesn't take that much. I mean, we're talking like 15 yards per game, 20 yards per game, and then like 3 or 4 touchdowns on the ground. And that catapults him from being a back end tight end 1 basically into tight end 5. Like that just,
Mhm.
it's because you have this big jumble of players that you don't even need that high of a passing ceiling on him, that if you just add just that little bit, and it's kind of almost the Taysom Hill argument there, where you're getting the rushing, maybe sprinkle in a little bit of passing, catches the occasional ball, and the entry point on a low end tight end 1 is so low that when you've got somebody that's already sitting in that jumble naturally, and you add a different thing on top of it, that's going to push them up onto the very front of that tier. And so that's, I think, where Warren is sitting right now, the way that we're hearing about potential usage within the run game, creative ways to get the ball into his hands. I mean, you can run down, and do you think that, I mean, well, they're trying with Kyle Pitts, but like Dalton Kincaid, do you think that they're necessarily having creative ways to get the ball in Dalton Kincaid's hands right now? Or like a
Mhm.
guys like, I know we're hearing great things about
Like
Tyler
Tucker
Kraft
Kraft.
or Tucker Kraft, but are
Yeah.
they really trying creative ways to get him? I mean, I guess they played around with him doing the tush push a little bit, but yeah,
I think
that's, I
he's the
think, where,
only other one that kind of jumps out to me in that like middling tight end tier that I think could get some weird usage like that. That's because both of them, Tyler Warren and Tucker Kraft, are both just like off the charts athletes. Like we're looking at guys in 260-pound frames that can run just as fast as a cornerback. They want to get the ball in these guys' hands, even if that means just turning around and giving the ball to him.
right, or snapping it to him and saying, push this forward and get into the end
Yep.
zone, because that, I think, could very much be in play for Tyler Warren, who, again, he was a quarterback in high school. He
Mhm.
transitioned to being tight end. I mean, it's not exactly foreign for him to line up under center. And so when you're looking for a diverse way, and we talked way back in rookie season, I kind of floated out there of like, we like Josh Downs. I think we think Michael
Yeah.
Pittman's a good player, but I don't know that either of them, if you were to stack them next to Jamar Chase, you know who's getting near 30% target share. And it's the type of situation where if Tyler Warren is an elite level player, he's going to separate himself among the other, no matter how deep the other targets are. And if we're playing Anthony Richardson and you're concerned about his accuracy and you're concerned about these different things, let's throw it to the big guy and do it easy way, and kind of build that confidence for Richardson too. And so I think that all that factors into it.
And they did talk about his hands in both of those quotes that I read. They talked about his hands. There was something that they talked about back in April that really made him the exact quote we got from Chris Ballard was a no brainer pick. And Chris Ballard talked about his hands as well. So you're looking at a guy like you said, yeah, Anthony Richardson. No secret here. We're not, spilling something that you don't already know. Struggles with some accuracy. So if you've got a guy with a catch radius the size of a barn door that's going to be operating 5 to 10 yards off the line of the scrimmage, it is going to make his job a little bit easier. So very, very bullish on Tyler Warren, a guy you and I both really liked during the prospect cycle, during rookie season, and now is already starting to make a splash early in training camp. Another tight end that you and I both really, really liked, making a splash right now in training camp, Mason Taylor. We already got a report today saying that he is outplaying Jeremy Ruckert and will be the week 1 tight end 1 for the Jets. This is a very young guy, drafted at 21 years old. there was a lot of talk that he's an athlete, but that he needs to shore up and polish up some of the skills before he can play at the NFL level. Well, it sounds like it took him about a week of NFL training camp to get up to speed and start immediately outplaying the vets there. And on top of that, it just seems like every day. I don't want to overreact too much to the highlights that are shared on social media, but every single day we're seeing Mason Taylor ripping off a big play after the catch, coming down with a diving catch, making a contested catch over a defender. I mean, he looks all the part of a dynamic tight end, and he is doing this as I believe just turned 22 years old, but definitely not ignoring this. And on top of that, he is also has a very easy path to being second on the team in targets. We just saw Cole Kmet with Justin Fields a couple of years ago give us a top 10 season. Again, like I don't want to buy into the hype too much, but Mason Taylor being a top 10 tight end this year wouldn't be all that surprising.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, LSU has a reputation as basically wide receiver U. I mean, they had Malik Neighbors playing with him, Brian Thomas Jr. And so I think that that creates situations for schools like LSU, schools like Ohio State, because tight end can be a little bit more hit or miss on what you've got on the depth chart. That basically, if you're pumping through Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors and you're getting those kids every single year, you're going to build your offensive attack around those receivers. And so
Mhm.
implementing a tight end to that can be really difficult because, if I'm getting the 5-star best receiver and I've got right behind him and whole another one, okay, I know how I'm going to build my offense because I want the third one to come in two and see that. And so I think that that's allows a guy like Mason Taylor to float under the radar. And if you've got a little bit more of an analytical approach on the way that you're building out your prospect model, you might not pick up those guys all the time. Whereas
Mhm.
like a guy like Trey McBride at Colorado State, they're like, we don't get Trey McBrides at Colorado State, so we're going to give this dude the ball 15 times a game because
Right.
that's what we got. And so I think even Tyler
Or
Warren, when you look at
Harold Fannin at
right
Bowling
at
Green,
Bowling
right.
Green, or even Tyler Warren at Penn State. Penn State, when they lost to Notre Dame, do you know how many balls their wide receivers caught in that game against Notre Dame?
Like 6.
0. Their wide
Oh my
receivers, I do not think
gosh.
they had a single catch the entire game. And so that gives you like the idea of what
Right.
Tyler Warren was working with in the rest of the offense, because KeAndre Lambert-Smith was their best receiver left to go to Auburn.
Mhm.
But that's where I think that it allows Taylor, and we know NFL bloodlines. I feel like you talk about Mason Taylor's name, you've got to
You
mention
have to
NFL
mention it. Yeah.
bloodlines, but grew up within the game. We know he's a high level athlete and opportunity. I mean, and that's the biggest thing. And we know that Justin Fields, we called it out when he was drafted to New York, that Justin Fields loved going to the tight end. And so having that safety blanket underneath to develop that rapport and be that guy, the number 2 target earner within that offense. And they're running Josh Reynolds out there. And that's really kind of probably just because he knows the playbook better than the other guys. And Arian Smith will make an occasional mention as a splash player, but whether he's going to catch the ball or not, that's always going to be an open question. So that's kind of what you're working with on the depth chart right now. So that opens up a ton of opportunity for Mason Taylor. And you can project the Jets to be at the near bottom in passing yards because they probably will be. But when you're still a top 2 target earner in that type of situation, and you can potentially be a red zone threat when they get down there, it allows, and again, the floor is so low on a tight end 1 entry point.
Right. And we saw last year Pat Fryermuth, he was getting peppered when Justin Fields was there too. I've watched Justin Fields up close as a Bears fan. He looks to his first read, which was DJ Moore, and if DJ Moore is covered, he looks to his second read, which is Cole Kmet, and if Cole Kmet's covered, he's running. And I think in New York, we're going to see him look to Garrett Wilson, and if Garrett Wilson's covered, he's going to look to Mason Taylor, and if Mason Taylor's covered, he's gunning. And I think Mason Taylor too, like you said, like if you're looking just analytically, he was a guy that early in the prospect cycle, I start with the numbers and that kind of points me to who to watch. And there's nothing really exciting. I mean, last year was his best year in college, 546 yards, 2 touchdowns. But then you watch him and you say, like, wow, why wasn't this guy used more? And then what really moved him up the rankings for me, this is going to sound silly to a lot of people, but the NFL Combine. And that gauntlet drill is something that I put a lot of weight in. And you just saw, like, he is just as big as anybody else out there, but he was far and away the most fluid athlete in this tight end class. I mean, he was just feet on the line on every single step, catching every single ball effortlessly. And he just looked so smooth and polished athletically compared to his peers that's when I went back and took a deeper dive at Mason Taylor. And I was like, wait, I really, really like this guy. And I remember you and I were both saying that, like, picking at the end of round 1 where the Chiefs and Bengals were sitting there with a need for tight end, we were saying Mason Taylor would make sense as a round 1 pick, fell, halfway into round 2, but still got good draft capital. So a big riser, definitely not somebody to ignore. and a guy that I've moved way up in my redraft rankings as well. I've got him as my tight end 18, and that even feels way too low. But where that is, I mean, I'm walking out of out of a lot of drafts with Mason Taylor this offseason.
Yeah, no,
Another
that's
guy I
a
want to
good
talk
call out.
about, Jeff. Yeah, sorry.
That's it. That is a good call out.
Tank Bigsby is another guy who's getting a lot of steam right now, getting a lot of run with the ones, as a lot of the guys are that we're going to be talking about on today's show. But we got to report that he has been a focal point of the offense throughout camp. And not only are we getting good news about Tank Bigsby, but we're getting some news about Travis Etienne, the effort, and that his head just doesn't seem to be there, and that he's not playing like his normal self. We obviously got the fumbling issues with Tootin. So not only do we have a good, strong, positive drumbeat for Tank Bigsby, but we're also getting some negative drum beats regarding the other guys in the backfield here. So at what point do we adjust our rankings, Jeff, and make Tank Bigsby the highest rated player in this backfield?
Oh, I already did that. Yeah,
All
I
right.
definitely did that already. So no,
I mean, I tightened him up a little bit. I've still got ETN a few spots ahead, but yeah, it's getting close for me.
No, let's see. I've got Bigsby right now as my running back. You'd think I would be doing a show and be professional about it, but I'm about 40 on Tank Bigsby, and Travis Etienne is right behind him, and that's built off projections. So projecting heavy rushing volume going to Tank Bigsby, a little bit more passing work going to Travis Etienne, but when you break down to it, and I know one of our last episodes, I used Travis Etienne as my breakout guy, and kind of heading into it, it felt like that might be the type of situation. I'm wrong, like
I was there,
week
dude.
into camp, I was wrong.
I was
But
drafting a lot of ETN heading up to camp, so I'm not crazy about these reports.
well, some of it though, of him lacking focus, had not being that he has to feel like he is not going to be a part of this team, whether it is week 1 or next year. He knows his days are limited in
Right.
Jacksonville, and I think that's, and even when we should have been on Bigsby more earlier, because it's a little bit of hindsight 2020 at this point, but at the same time, when you look at what is in that backfield, he is going to be the guy in between the tackles that is going to be the bruiser. That if you are going to have a backfield that features different skill sets, he's the only one in the room that can do what Tank Bigsby can do. So of course he's going to be used heavily right now, because, and then when you look at the two players that they drafted, are a lot more on the edge type players, potential passing game usage, especially LaQuinn Allen passing game usage, but Bashal Tootin as a player that can break the edge. And so they're natural complements for Tank Bigsby, and they're natural replacements for Travis Etienne. And so if you're Travis Etienne, you're sitting here, your contract's ending.
Right.
They drafted your two replacements. Tank
Mhm.
Bigsby is doing something that you're not doing. And so it's a difficult situation for him to be in, but it is also the type of situation we see the Joe Mixon injury. There's a lot of time. It feels like there's not that much time before the season starts, because it goes from 0 to 120 miles per hour once these practices open and the news starts rolling in. There's still a lot of time before we are getting to that NFL week 1. And so there's a lot of camp to get through. There's a lot of guys that you need to get your guys healthy through that. So that's part of holding on to ETN. Part of that is other teams, they spent the offseason, they added the pieces that they wanted to add. And so part of that, seeing what you've got and making sure that, okay, this isn't going to cut it. We do need to go out there and make that move. And so I think that that's a big part of it as well. And ETN's making about $6.5 million this year. That's not nothing money to
Right.
add into your salary cap for a running back. And so that's a factor too. You kind of do get
And
the
if a team
feeling
takes
that,
a 7th round pick out there for ETN, you got to wonder if Jacksonville's going to take it.
well, with James Gladstone at GM, I absolutely guarantee they're going to take it, because the
Yeah.
confidence of, I don't know that there's anybody in the league that is more confident on being able to hit on a
Hitting
7th
on a
round
day
pick than
3.
James
Yeah.
Gladstone. So like they're going to take the pick if it's out there, but it's probably the type of situation of other teams calling their bluff a little bit on this and saying, hey, we know you drafted two guys that can be his replacement. We know Bigsby's going to do what Bigsby's going to do, and he's cost
But then
controlled for a couple more years.
I also see how the Houston Texans operate, where they are willing to just say, hey, rather than releasing this player, we'll give you a 7th round pick. They did it
Yeah.
with Joe Mixon. They just did it with Christian Kirk. They've already got that connection with the Jacksonville front office. So wouldn't surprise me one bit if they if Houston, if this Joe Mixon injury is as bad as we expect it to be, and Nick Chubb can't return to form, wouldn't shock me one bit if Houston calls up and says, hey, you know that deal that we just made with Christian Kirk? Let's do it again for Travis Etienne.
Yeah. Yeah. And in ETN's mind, is he in Josh Jacobs self-preservation mode at this point?
Right.
And is that some of the questions that's coming out in camp where Tank Bigsby's running with his hair on fire because I'm going to claim this job, and the rookies are, Bachal Tutin's punting the ball every time he touches it, and LaQuinn Allen, I think they're still trying to play him in the slot. I'm not sure what they're doing there, but if ETN's thinking, I'm not going to be here, I just got to make sure I'm healthy so I'm not going to be here, because next year is very up in the air for ETN. He's going to be a free agent, doesn't know what his future holds. Really, for the first time in the last 5+ years, he doesn't know what his future holds. And so I think that that's a big factor there.
And the last thing I'll say about Tank Bigsby, the name Tank Bigsby, I think a lot of people just have this idea that he's just this big bruising guy. If Travis Etienne were to get traded, Tank Bigsby had 51 receptions over his final 2 years at Auburn. He is a little bit better as a pass catcher than people realize. So, my goodness, with the reports we're getting about Tank Bigsby right now, if Travis Etienne is in fact traded, Tank Bigsby is probably cracking my top 20 running backs in rankings this year because he does have the skill set to be a 3-down back if called upon. All right, Jeff, let's talk about a couple more running backs here before we go on to the wide receivers. I'm just going to pass the ball to you and step back and let you ISO here. Jacory Croskey-Merritt getting a consistent drum beat. It has similarly been very quiet on Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler. And this was a guy that you were talking about back in February that you really, really liked. Fell to round 7 of the NFL draft, but we have just heard consistently about his wiggle and his power and all of the buzzy words that we want to hear about a good young running back. So what do you think is the upside here for Jacory Croskey-Merritt in this Commanders offense?
I mean, the upside is he's the feature back, and very, very early in the season, he's their feature back. I mean, I think that that's very much in play, because when you break it down, Brian Robinson got benched kind of last year, and I think that they were very frustrated with what they were getting for Brian Robinson last year, and so it was a little bit surprising to not see them be a little bit more aggressive in the market, either earlier in the draft or in free agency, to bring a body in. But then you land Jacory Croskey-Merritt, and it's one of those that there's occasionally, like, when we're in rookie draft mode and rookie guide prep mode, I'm just plowing through prospects and I'm just trying to watch everybody. And there are occasionally players where it's like the meme where the guy's watching TV late at night and he like sits up. Like, Jacory Croskey-Merritt is one of those dudes that when I got to him, you're walking in with like especially when you have knocked out the top guys of the draft, that, and you got pretty low expectations of what you're going to see. Jacory Croskey-Merritt was a sit up in the chair type of a guy when I got to reviewing his tape, because you see decisiveness, suddenness, violence in his cut. When you see a player that has that violence and that the ability to decide, I'm moving this direction and I'm going to go. And he's a wild story because he spent I think 4 full seasons at a very small school in Alabama, then spent a year with New Mexico State, then was going to play for Arizona, ended up not being eligible. And I loved Jacory Croskey-Merritt when I watched him, and then it was the Shrine Bowl. He got like a day before the Shrine Bowl, comes out and wins the MVP award of the Shrine Bowl after about a day of practice. And then he didn't get invited to the combine. And I was floored that he didn't get invited to the combine, because it just didn't seem to track with what I was watching with the Shrine Bowl performance. And that made me get off him a little bit, because to me, that's a red flag. If you're not going to be invited to the combine,
Right.
The guys that are not invited to the combine, it doesn't really work out very often for those guys that aren't at the combine. And so then he did catch 7th round draft capital, but again, lands in a situation where he can take that backfield and run with it. And it really sounds like that's what he's doing right now.
Yeah, and I still am holding a torch for Austin Eckler, who I think can carve out a role as, just a guy on passing down work and maybe getting some goal line work here and there. But Jacory Croskey-Merritt, I mean, this is one of the softest running back rooms in the NFL when you look at the ability to climb to the top of it. And it would just be foolish to ignore what we're hearing about Croskey-Merritt so far. So hat tip to you, Jeff, a guy that you really planted a flag on months and months ago and is now showing out in training camp. So we've talked about all the young guys so far, Anthony Richardson, a handful of rookies. Let's throw a veteran out there who's making some noise. Miles Sanders handily outplaying Javonte Williams is the report that we're hearing right now. We're hearing Jaden Blue, still doing what he does, showing off the athleticism. I have some pause with Jaden Blue because I worry about his abilities between the tackles. I think that he kind of needs to be schemed out wide zone touches if he wants to succeed. Where Miles Sanders, we've seen him, it's been a couple of years now, but he still does have some juice where he can rip off some big plays. He's got the pass catching chops as well. And this is one of the backfields that I think I want to pay the most amount of attention to because Brian Schottenheimer isn't afraid to lean on one guy. And there isn't anybody right now that has really stood out from this backfield. We expect this to be a high scoring, moving in down the field offense. Rico Dowdle isn't anybody that I get especially excited about, but he was great last year over the second half of the season. So I want to find out who is going to be the guy to emerge from this backfield. And right now it's looking like, as crazy as it sounds, it might be Miles Sanders.
Yeah, and I mean, I know Miles Sanders has become a meme at this point, and like people want to make the jokes and all that about him, but I mean, 2022 he had 1,269 yards and 11 touchdowns, and we
He got a
know,
huge
I mean,
contract after
Philadelphia's
that year.
yeah, I got a huge contract after they. Philadelphia is a fantastic offensive ecosystem. He could not have gone from a great offensive ecosystem to a worse offensive ecosystem to landing on that Carolina team with Bryce Young coming in as a rookie and just a mess. They got,
No offensive
they had
line at that
traded
point either.
DJ Moore, no offensive line. They had nothing. And I think, how many coaches did they have that year? I think more than one for sure. So kind of moving through that, it was a mess of a year for Miles Sanders. And then last year he had some a little bit more positive news, maybe. Definitely not the player that he was in 2022, but I think that he's even talked about basically once he signed that contract with Carolina, kind of maybe thought he had made it and then kind of got a very rude awakening. I think the last 2 years, and I've seen him quotes about him basically saying it was an eye-opening experience. Now I'm getting a second opportunity and I'm not going to waste that. And so I think that that's a big part of it too. And I mean, this again, 2022 is not that long ago. It feels like it's that long time ago, but it was not that long ago that this was a guy that he was a top end fantasy option in that. And we know we were kind of waiting for him to break out for a couple of years before that actually did happen. And I know I remember back in 2020 seeing him go in the first round of dynasty drafts because in dynasty startup drafts because of the value that he held there as a young player. Finally put it together, 1 year gets paid and then things fall back apart. But I mean, we shouldn't be so quick to write him off.
Do you remember a point in time when there was a legitimate argument about who the best running back was in the NFC East? And people were saying that Miles Sanders was better than Saquon Barkley. That was just a few years ago. Now, I was vehemently against that take, but there were people out there that were saying Miles Sanders was better than Saquon Barkley just a handful of years ago. And then I also, I went and looked into it. I kind of forgot how injury ridden his time was in
Yeah.
Carolina. Preseason, pulled a groin injury his first year there, so he missed almost 2 weeks of practice right when he showed up to Carolina. And then week 6 of that season, he got injured with a shoulder injury and dealt with that for the rest of the year. And then last year, like you said, he did start to get some time, but got hurt in week 10 and then missed the rest of the year. So, I mean, it has been just nonstop injuries for Miles Sanders. So, a guy who just off the charts athleticism, has the big breakaway speed that we want to see, and a guy that we may have written off a little bit too soon. So I went out and was looking earlier today. He was on waivers in a handful of leagues where I was able to just go out on my Dynasty waiver wire and just pick up Miles Austin. Definitely check in your leagues in the deep ones. He's probably already rostered, but might be available in some leagues for free right now. And at best, you're looking at the potential RB1 for the Dallas Cowboys. At worst, you can cut him off your roster midseason and make room for somebody else. All right, Jeff, now for the fun part, we're going to talk about some wide receivers. There are a lot of wide receivers getting good buzz right now, but I don't think any of the early guys. We already talked about Emeka Egbuka, so we'll just sweep that under the rug. We talked about him on a show a couple days ago as being a guy who's going to make an immediate impact. We don't need to talk about Emeka Egbuka on every single show. Let's talk about Matthew Golden, another first-round receiver today, playing with Romeo Doubs in 2 wide receiver sets, and I'm going to read a couple quotes here, as I've been doing for a lot of these guys. Jordan Love said, the playmaking ability is there. You see that when the ball's in the air, he's going to get it and make that play. And then from the GM, Brian Gutekunst, he said, I do think sometimes that players we're getting here now are a little bit more accustomed to adjusting quickly, and he is really smart. Again, another one of our guys that adjusted well. It sounds like they are already serving him with a full dose of routes. We're seeing the short routes. We're seeing the plays after the catch. We're seeing the 60-yard touchdown in camp in practice just a couple of days ago. We're seeing the contested catch abilities. I mean, I had some doubts about Matthew Golden, and I think that's why I wanted to bring him up on this show. But it sounds like he is quickly starting to separate himself from the pack in Green Bay.
Another flag plant that I had no doubts about. So no, I think Golden basically, I feel like what we see sometimes because of that 40-yard dash, where it's like he had that great time, and so like
He
people
must be
like
John
it's
Ross.
kind of it's like if you're too fast, then like all you can do is run fast in a straight line. Like it doesn't matter like what you can actually do if you're too fast. All you can do is run fast in a straight line. And it was like he crossed that threshold. But at the same time, there was controversy around his time. So he it's like he's too fast, but also he's fake fast. So he must not be good. And I think that when you actually watched him, it really broke down to, especially when you're looking at Texas in their playoff run. I mean, he was the guy that they were going to in the big moments. And it was gosh, why am I it was the other I'm blanking on the other wide receiver that is like
Isaiah
going
Bond.
to jail. Isaiah Bond. Yeah. Yeah. And it was Isaiah Bond came in with all the heat from all the Devi community, and the expectation was Isaiah Bond was the guy. But then when you actually watched the college football playoff in Gotta Have It moments, it was Matthew Golden. And when you really watched Matthew Golden, the route running was there, the understanding as a wide receiver. You could obviously, he was not John Ross. You could easily see that when you watched him. And when you looked at Green Bay, I mean, I made the argument when they made the pick that when you look at their receiver room, everybody is so specialized in what they can do that sometimes you put that guy in there that can do everything, and all of a sudden he can play in these different roles, becomes the number one receiver because he has the ability to do everything while everybody else is very, very specialized. It's like if you're talking about, I talk a lot about building the basketball team when you're looking at a receiver room. And when you look at the Packers last year, it's like you've got the good corner spot up three guy, you've got the rebounder, you've got these things. And sometimes when you pluck that guy that can get you 35 points per game into that lineup, all of a sudden the corner guy that couldn't get open before, he's up firing up wide open threes. And the guy that can crash the boards on following, like he doesn't have a guy blocking him out anymore because that guy has crashed to follow the scorer. And all of a sudden it makes everything else make sense. And I think that that's exactly what Golden potentially is within this offense. And we're seeing it immediately in camp. The things that you're seeing is not, oh, he ran fast in a straight line and they threw it over the shoulder and he caught it. You're seeing him go up and find the ball because that's what he is. He is that type of player.
That was my favorite highlight that actually came out. It was a terribly thrown ball by Jordan Love that looked like it was just going to be a pick, and Golden came back to it. Not only did he come down with the contested catch, but then he threw the defender to the ground and made the play after the catch to take it into the end zone. And that was a wow play for me, where like he is already playing with grown man strength against NFL defenders. So yeah, another big mover for me. I've moved him up my redraft rankings. Can't really move him up too high in Dynasty rookie rankings. I was already about where I feel comfortable with him, but sounds like that is going to be an immediate impact. It's not this like, hey, let's see what he is. It sounds like he is ready to just be that wide receiver one in this offense. So let's talk about another guy that we like, a guy that I have just been pounding the table for all offseason, Demario Douglas, and he is getting the consistent work out of the slot in New England, which is exactly what we want to see in this Josh McDaniels offense. And two quotes that I got here, one from Taylor Kyles, who covers the Patriots, and he said, Demario Douglas has been the Patriots' best pass catcher, and it isn't close. Love to hear that. And you've also got Drake May, who has been targeting him very heavily, says you cannot guard Demario Douglas in a phone booth. He said that on the K Adams show a few days ago. So again, this is something that I have been aggressively bullish on Demario Douglas in my redraft rankings, Jeff. I've had him as my wide receiver 48. And that was back when he was ranked outside of the top 80. I want to keep moving him up as we get more smoke coming out of New England, because it sounds like he could end up being the wide receiver one on this team in a year where we expect Drake May to take a big step forward.
Yeah, and I think that when you really broke it down in the offseason and you were on it, I was on it, I've got 22% Demario Douglas on my underdog portfolio right now. So that tells you I've been
37%
pounding that. Good for you, Dave. I love that. Yeah.
I'm taking an aggressive stance this year. Last year, I tried to play the ADP game too much. This year, I said, I'm just gonna get the players I like.
Yep, yep, and well, and when you look back, it is like one guy per round that actually does hit, so you may as well go for the
Right.
guy. But I think that, yeah, when you look at the skill set within that room, it was obvious that he was going to be the slot receiver, and we know, I mean, Julian Edelman obviously, but the slot receiver within this Josh McDaniels offense always eats, and I think that that's the biggest thing there of the amount of the depth of the and everything that they have potentially working within that room. I mean, Douglas is just a slot specialist, and so you lock that to roll down, and then Stephon Diggs coming back healthy can do Stephon Diggs things, move around the field, those
Mhm.
types of things, and then kind of you look at the other guys, of Kayshon Boutte or
Sounds like
Matt
Kyle Williams
Collins,
is actually gonna be
Kyle
the
Williams,
flanker here.
you,
Sounds like it's
yeah,
gonna be
yeah, Kyle
Stephon Diggs
Williams
in
is
the
the
X,
deep
Pop
threat. Yep,
Douglas in the slot, and Kyle Williams out in as the flanker. So this all of a sudden
exactly.
is a really good receiver room.
Yeah, and Drake May might be really good, and yeah, it's got Travion Henderson in that backfield too. You got a pretty good tight end, Hunter Henry. Look out for the Patriots. So that's yeah, I think
Not to
Douglas
mention Will
again.
Campbell, who's ready to like die on the field for his quarterback. Yeah, this Patriots team, they're gonna be pretty punchy this year.
But I think that that's, and it paints it, when you really look at back at maybe some of these ambiguous situations, and if you can find the guy that, especially in a wide receiver room, when you've got a very ambiguous receiver room like this was viewed as, again, Pop Douglas is going to be the slot. That's what he did. And you watched them last year. He was that. He ended up being Drake May's go-to player during his rookie year, him and Hunter Henry. So I think it's not surprising to see this news coming out.
Yeah, 5 times as many snaps out of the slot last year as any other Patriots receiver, and sounds like he is just excelling in that role this year. So big winner, and a guy that I don't know if the markets have really reacted to it yet. I don't know what you can get him for in Dynasty, but wouldn't surprise me if you can just go get Pop Douglas right now for a third, maybe even a fourth round pick in your Dynasty leagues. I'm going to go out and try to send some trades as soon as we finish the show because I've got him on a lot of Dynasty rosters, but I want him on even more. Jeff, let's talk about another deep pull here. KeAndre Lambert-Smith, a rookie for the Los Angeles Chargers. Of course, we're excited about Lad McConkey and Quentin Johnston and Trey Harris, but KeAndre Lambert-Smith is getting a lot of smoke. And man, highlights again, these quick little clips that are getting shared on social media. You don't want to react too much, but also when you see a guy going like 11 feet up in the air, coming down with a ball, and then getting both toes down on the sideline before going out of bounds. And then immediately after that, he's skying up and getting another ball where he is landing flat on his back. I hate to make the comp because it is so fresh, but I see a lot of Mike Williams in KeAndre Lambert-Smith's game.
Yeah, Kendrick Bourne was my comp in the rookie guide, and it was because I think Kendrick Bourne is kind of he can win in the short to intermediate areas, which is what KeAndre Lambert-Smith did at Penn State. He was really like kept to those areas of the field. And then when he went to Auburn, they opened up the vertical elements with him. And so he showed out in that area as well. And so I thought he would be a day 3 pick. That's where he ended up. And I had comped him to Kendrick Bourne. I kind of expected him to be a role player within a receiver rotation. And it probably is what he is, especially this first year. Maybe he develops into even more. I think holistically, though, it presents a pretty interesting conversation about this Chargers receiver room in general, because I do think that we were operating with the expectation for a long time of, I mean, this is Lad McConkey and nobody else. And it's just going to
Mhm.
be volume all day long for Lad McConkey. And then all of a sudden camp opens and Quentin Johnston has really put on a lot of steam and shown a very, very much improvement in his third year. And then Trey Harris, we like Trey Harris too. And he's kind of coming in and starting to make plays. And KeAndre Lambert-Smith, it's like the buzz every day does one of those things that makes you say, wow. And then you throw Oronde Gadsden June, Andre Gadsden the second in there
Yes.
too, as kind of this versatile tight end weapon. And, having Tyler Conklin, having
Not,
Will
you haven't
Disley,
even mentioned Omari and Hampton.
yeah. And
This is
so
going to be a good
you
team.
start to, they're going to be a very good team. Their defense was very good last year. They've put some pieces together in the offense. The offensive line should be very, very good. Joe Alt in year 2. They took care of the left tackle there, Roshan
John
Slater.
Slater.
So
Yep.
yeah, so they've got that locked up. They maybe some question about the center. They lost Drew Dahlman, went to your Chicago Bears, so that might be a question there. But I
Dolman
think
went to
that
Atlanta, I believe, didn't he?
maybe he did go to Atlanta.
or from
Sure, I
Atlanta.
believe you.
Yeah, I forget. They did. It wasn't Drew Dalman, but whoever their center was. Yes,
Okay.
I'm drawing a blank right now. But
I
yeah,
think Drew Dalman went somewhere else though. But
no,
anyway,
Drew
I
Dalman went
digress.
to Chicago from Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was another center. Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue, and I just can't get there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. It was not Drew Dalman. Roast me in the comments. Anyways, the conversation, the one of two things is wrong here. Either Lad McConkey is wrong or Justin Herbert is wrong on ADP. And so it's either going to be like you're fading the heck out of Justin Herbert as a quarterback 15 because you don't think the passing game volume is there. But now we know that we have a really good feeling that there's going to be a lot more other options around there. And so maybe Lad McConkey is not getting this massive target share that's going to make him a borderline first round pick. Or maybe he is, and these other things are going to happen too. And Justin Herbert is going to be that guy that is just the screaming value at quarterback right now. I think that when you add it all up, because I do think that it's legitimate. What we've seen Quentin Johnson do it on an NFL field. I think Trey Harris, it's legitimate that he's that good. I think that KeAndre Lambert-Smith, these plays, they're not blowing smoke. Like these are legitimate plays that not a lot of guys are making right now. And so when
I
you
hope our
start to
video
stack
editor can
pieces
drop
up,
that clip that I was talking about, the one where he jumps up and gets the feet down, because it was unbelievable to
yeah.
see, even on a practice field.
Yeah. And so, but it's, yeah, if you've got all these weapons, either Justin Herbert's going to be way, way better than that, or they are going to be just this committed to the run game on a Greg Roman offense. And everybody's going to touch the ball a little bit. And you're just getting tanked with Lad McConkey at the top end of your draft right now. So I think it's tough for both Justin Herbert to be like a quarterback 15 and Lad McConkey to be a borderline first round pick without
Right.
these
And
weapons not being true at all.
Right. And that's the main reason I wanted to talk about KeAndre Lambert-Smith. It is tough once you start crunching the numbers to find a path where KeAndre Lambert-Smith can be effective without an injury ahead of him. But I think Justin Herbert is really the big winner here, knowing that like his wide receiver 4, a rookie, is already out here making big plays. And Jeff, it was Sam Mustipher, by the way. Like I said, on the tip of my tongue, Sam Mustipher was the center that they walked
yes.
to Tennessee this year.
He's a good player.
All right. Let's keep working down the list here. Dante Thornton Jr., a guy who lit it up at the NFL Combine, came in almost 6'5", ran a 4.3 flat in the 40-yard dash. People just got really excited because of that size-speed combo, and now here he is in the Las Vegas Raiders. Didn't get the same draft capital as Jack Besh, but has been running with the ones as the potential X receiver. And what we've heard is that there's a lot of overlap between what Jacoby Myers does and what Jack Besh does, and that they could be kind of looking towards the future with that Jack Besh selection in round 2. However, Dante Thornton fits an immediate need for the team as the X receiver. And of course, we do see Brock Bowers coming in there and playing X every now and then. But when you look at the other guys that are out there, Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers, those guys can't line up in that X position. So Dante Thornton, day 3 wide receiver, might end up making an impact this season.
Yeah, and when the Raiders took him, it's like the meme thing because of course the Raiders took the fast guy, but then you hear the camp reports and like maybe we need to really be entertaining the scenario of like these occasional guys that are just pop off of everything because of the athletic traits. I mean, that could really be in play for Dante Thornton Jr. And I think that's where it becomes an interesting conversation because we know Brock Bowers is going to get Brock Bowers and we know that Jacoby Myers will get some volume, but there's a potential where Dante Thornton is just like that dude basically athletically, and it just clicks and he's the number 3 target within this offense and it is an absolute screaming value. And I think that when you're looking at a day 3 receiver to kind of hit in that areas, I mean, it's unfair to comp anybody to Puka Nacua, and he's a completely different type of player than Puka Nacua, but at the same time that physicality showed up immediately for Puka Nacua. You saw that, and the opportunity was there for Puka Nacua. I mean, if the physicality, the speed is showing up immediately for Dante Thornton, the opportunity is certainly there. And it sounds like without even second thought, it was like, oh yeah, this dude's a starter for us. And it's not even like we're gonna put him behind this nominal veteran and make him earn his stripes. It's like, no, he's gonna be out there from day one of the practice. And as those drum beats you keep hearing of, like I everything that I've read and seen about the Raiders, it's like Dante Thornton's like he's that type of guy. So I think it's a very, very interesting conversation there.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obvious downside here. I'm old enough to remember Brian Edwards, a guy
Yeah.
who was getting a lot of smoke as a rookie in Las Vegas. But you don't want to completely write it off either. So this is one that I don't think I'm reacting too heavily to. Like I'm not going out and trying to trade for. I almost said Brian Edwards. I'm not trying to trade for Dante Thornton on all of my teams immediately, but definitely something that I'm paying attention to. Sprinkled him in some late round rookie drafts when we started getting some of the word out of OTAs that he was running with the ones. So definitely something to pay attention to. Let's talk about a couple veterans here, Jeff. Hunter Renfrow. Not only are they saying that he is likely to make the team in Carolina, but could also be the potential starting slot receiver there. Dave Canales, we got a quote from him saying he looks like Hunter, the guy from 2021. So glad he is with this team. And we have seen the clips where he looks as sharp as ever. I mean, a very limited guy in what he can do. They're not going to ask him to line up and beat press man coverage on the outside. He's going to play in the slot. He's going to work as that short to intermediate guy who's going to be that safety blanket for Bryce Young. But again, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Pop Douglas and the utilization of the wide receivers there. It is very easy to envision a world where Hunter Renfrow is the slot receiver, Tedero McMillan is the X receiver, Xavier Legette is the guy playing flanker, and all of a sudden you have three guys that are very good in those roles. Last year, Legette was playing out of position where they were asking him to be the X, but I think when he can rely on his speed and his physicality, we can see a Quentin Johnston year two type of season where he can use his speed to break off big plays. And then you've got Hunter Renfrow working in the slot, and then Tedero McMillan doing what he does, just being that number one receiver working on the outside. It just makes so much sense to me schematically that this is one that I'm not just filing away and waiting. Like I will go out right now. Hunter Renfrow is available on your waiver wire. I'm telling you, if you're playing in Dynasty, check Hunter Renfrow is probably out there right now, and you can pick him up for free. And we know that when he's out there, he is a target magnet.
You know where he went to college, Dave?
Syracuse?
Nah, he's a
No,
Clemson
it's all
guy.
right.
So
Clemson, right?
he's
I
a
got the
Clemson,
orange. Yeah, that's
going
right.
back to Carolina, so like
All
hometown
right.
story
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So it's that's a lot of fun. And you know, yeah, he was really good in 2021, over 100 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, and then
He was
just like
top 12 wide
disappeared.
receiver
It was
that year and then just
yes,
disappeared.
yeah. Just disappeared, and you know, lands with Josh McDaniels, comes in there, and everybody expects him to be Julian Edelman with Josh McDaniels, and that goes sideways, and then out of the league completely last year. And it's great to see this bounce back here. But when you really schematically look at what the Panthers, I mean, yeah, they had Adam Thielen, but like he's like playing the slot, but he's not. Adam Thielen's a little bit more of a vertical type of player.
Right.
He's not the like beat you off the line Hunter Renfrow type, and so Renfrow can step in there, be that natural slot, and it opens up some interesting questions. Mike Kay does a really, really good job, and I was listening to
Oh, yeah.
him on a podcast about a week ago, kind of looking at this receiver room as the hive kind of bubbled up for Hunter Renfrow, and they broke it down, and they were like, well, we know what Tedero McMillan's going to be the X. We know top 10 pick. They're not going to give up on Xavier Legette. He's got a really good chance to be the Z in this offense. And then we know Adam Thielen is going to be there too. And Hunter Renfrow locks down the slot. And then they love David Moore. David Moore is like the second kid of Dave Canales. Like
He's
it's
been there
like
for a long time too.
well, yeah, it's been with Canales in Seattle, was with him in Tampa, and now he's in there with them in Carolina. So it's like he's like the second child, basically. And then Jimmy Horn was drafted this year, and he is potentially in the return game. They were wondering about Jalen Coker, where that all works
Right.
out with Jalen Coker as if he's going to even make the team at some level. And we have somebody that I think every single video we do, somebody is on there with Jalen Coker saying, you guys didn't mention Jalen Coker. What's the deal? And I just wanted that person to know we mentioned Jalen Coker.
Yeah. But really, he might not make the team. Like that is actual word coming out of Carolina. So definitely not something worth ignoring. And you talk about it, first of all, Hunter Renfrow, I think it's out of sight, out of mind. Like, and he's also got, a big bald spot on his head. So I think people think that Hunter Renfrow is like 35 years old. He's 29. Like he is still very, very young. And you mentioned Adam Thielen, and I look back to Adam Thielen. 3 straight years in Minnesota where he was just on the downtrend. 925 yards, 726 yards, 716 yards. I mean, he was getting banged up. He wasn't the player that he was. And then first year in Carolina, rewind the clock at age 33 and has the first 1,000-yard season that he had since 2018. So, you know, I'm not willing to just say that, like, well, Hunter Renfrow has been out of the league and he's getting up there in age, a lot younger than people realize. And still, if that's all they're asking him to do is play out of the slot, he can be immediately valuable. So, this is one that I said I think is a little bit more actionable than some of the other guys that we've talked about. You can pick him up on your waiver wire and could be a guy that realistically could end up with 100 plus targets as the slot receiver in this offense. Two more guys we want to talk about here, Jeff, and I will let you take this one. Josh Palmer, the word that I was able to find is that he has been a magnet for Josh Allen. You obviously pay a little bit closer attention to the Buffalo beat than I do. So talk to me a little bit more about Josh Palmer.
You know where Josh Palmer's from?
I'm going to guess Upper New York, maybe.
Toronto. He's from
All right.
Toronto, Canada. So, another guy that's kind of going back home. And Landsman Buffalo, they went out, they were aggressive to sign him in free agency. I believe it was day one that they signed him. They gave him good money and basically come in and they let Mac Hollins go. And so coming into this, I think he's got it locked down. He's going to be starting outside receiver, probably the Z in this offense for them. And so I think last year it's the time we were all so ready for Josh Palmer to just take off last year in that Chargers situation because, Keenan Allen was gone. Mike Williams was gone. We had seen flashes from Josh Palmer when one of those guys would be out of the lineup and it was all clear for Josh Palmer to take off and go. And then that didn't really happen. He struggled with injuries all year long. And then now he's healthy and he's coming back to kind of quote unquote home a little bit, and Toronto being right across the lake there from Buffalo. And so getting this situation to come in and be a starting receiver and playing with Josh Allen. I mean, you're playing with Josh Allen. I mean, 10 touchdowns is very much in play for Josh Palmer. So you've got that. You got Keon Coleman's been a little bit up and down, has a good day, has a bad day, kind of it's some issues with concentration type of things that he's struggling with there. I think putting it all together, I think it's the type of thing that Keon Coleman's head gets moving a little bit faster than his body at times is probably what he's running into a little bit. But I think Josh Palmer's come in and just been a professional and really showing himself as he is going to be outside starter. He is going to be a key contributing member of this team. Elijah Moore's missed practice. Curtis Samuel's missed about a week of practice. And so that's even opened up bigger opportunity for Josh Palmer to just really lock that role down. And he could be the second target earner on this offense. He could have the second most targets of any Bills wide receiver and get just at the very end of your draft or free basically. And we just did the fishbowl. I got Josh Palmer in round 21, the second to last round, and I got Miles Sanders in round 22 of that draft. And so I was pretty thrilled with those two values, but Palmer, could be that guy. Josh Allen's number 2 target is probably going to score a lot of touchdowns and probably be in your fantasy lineup.
I'm just going to ask you, since you've been paying closer attention to this than I, any smoke on Elijah Moore, or are we getting anything out of him? I mean, he's a guy that I'm still holding on to in a handful of dynasty leagues and a little bit more aggressive in my rankings on Elijah Moore than a lot of other people in the industry are. But I haven't really heard much of anything. Wondering if you have.
So Joe Brady absolutely loves Curtis Samuel. And so that's a key part there. And I think that when you really look at, well, not only that, but when you look at the receiver room holistically, Josh Palmer, Keon Coleman working outside, one the X, one the Z, Khalil Shakir locking down the slot. Curtis Samuel is kind of that guy that can be that Swiss Army knife that can move around a little bit, or if you want to work him out of the backfield, you want to put him in the slot, you want him to send him vertically, he can do those types of things. And Joe Brady absolutely loves him. And then really they signed Elijah Moore right after the draft because I think they really, really wanted to draft a wide receiver, and then just the board did not fall for them to be able to draft a wide receiver. And they signed Elijah Moore right after that because they do use a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, and they want to be able to, they just didn't want to have that fall off from if somebody was injured and out of the lineup. And I think they saw it with Curtis Samuel last year with the injuries that he dealt with. Once he was hurt, I think they really kind of struggled to be able to run the sets that they wanted to run. And I think they saw Elijah Moore sitting there and saying, well, we didn't get the rookie that we wanted to get. We'll bring Elijah Moore in, kind of like be able to fill in the cracks there. I think it's going to be, there's been some talk that he's kind of on the roster bubble a little bit of if he's even going to make the team, because Terrell Shavers has come in and had a really strong camp, and he had a strong camp last year, but didn't really connect on being, and he can be that backup outside receiver for Josh Palmer and for Keon Coleman, bigger body receiver that at one time was a high level recruit, started out at Alabama, ended up at Mississippi State, kind of bounced around a little bit, and he's kind of taken a circuitous path to making contributions, but he's had a strong camp there and he's been available, whereas Elijah Moore has not been available. And so I think it's going to be, if he makes the roster, he's more of a depth piece probably than, he's off my radar completely in redraft. And I'm just not thinking that there's going to be a lot for Elijah Moore outside of an injury.
All right. Well, I knocked him down my rankings. Appreciate the insight there, Mr. Buffalo. All right. Last guy that we want to talk about here, Luke McCaffrey. And we already talked a little bit about Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Had this been a well thought out show, we probably would have stuck with these guys back to back, but it's not. We're throwing this together, kind of on the fly. But Luke McCaffrey, Dan Quinn said that he made a big jump from his rookie season. And this, I feel like the hype that we're hearing for Luke McCaffrey is just carrying over from OTAs, where they said that he showed up in great shape. He had been working out with his brother all off season, had a really strong drum beat coming out of OTAs. And now it sounds like it is just spilling over into training camp as well. And when I look at this Commanders offense right now, especially the wide receiver room, you got Terry McLaurin, who is holding out, and it doesn't sound like the Commanders have any interest in trying to negotiate with him. He's kind of saying that his ankle's bothering him right now, and I'm sure $34 million would quickly clear up any ankles injuries that he's dealing with. You got Deebo Samuel, who is not looked like the player that he was a handful of years ago. There's high expectations for him, but the reality is that wide receiver one spot, as it stands right now, is up for the taking. And Luke McCaffrey didn't do much as a rookie, but Jeff, do you think there's still reason to buy in year two?
Yeah, and I think McCaffrey ran into, so he's not a freak athlete. He's not one of these switch up guys that could come in and kind of utilize that athleticism to overcome the learning curve of becoming an NFL receiver. And so, like, I think that those types of players in their rookie year can really struggle, because it's like you don't know the intricacies that you need to know to be able to become a receiver, but at the same time, you're just not able to like freak your way through it. And like,
Right.
so it's like, what's the path to be able to figure this out here for Luke McCaffrey? And I think that ran into that a little bit. And then they were better than they expected to be. They've got Jane Daniels playing in his first year. They went with a little bit more of veteran receivers with Olamide Zaccheaus, with Noah Brown, kind of having some guys that are a little bit older to kind of have that ease Jane Daniels into the lineup, I think, a little bit as the season went on. And so it kind of, Luke McCaffrey started behind the 8 ball and then wasn't able to get past the 8 ball in that rookie year, and ended up being just a wash of a year. But then, yeah, gets recommitted, understands, works out with his brother, understands what the physicality requirements are going to be, understands a little bit more the nuances of how to play the position, runs into just a prime opportunity with Terry McLaurin out of the lineup. You're kind of, this is the type of thing of like, well, you want to build your offense with Terry McLaurin in the offense. And so like, if Noah Brown's going to do the things that Noah Brown's going to do, and Deebo Samuel's going to do the things that Deebo Samuel's going to do, somebody's kind of got to step into that default Terry McLaurin role that allows you to build the other pieces. And then, so Luke McCaffrey kind of falls into there, and all of a sudden shows out and does a good job there. And that can really change the conversation on how he's viewed within the organization, how he's viewed within the game planning, the schemes for this year. And a guy that I think gets written off because he really struggles rookie year. And I think that we so much of Dynasty has moved towards a redraft type of mindset. And if we don't see, we got spoiled a little bit on some of these receivers, on the Puka Nacua, on the Jamar Chase, of like coming in and immediately being contributors, that, you know, somebody that has a little bit more of a traditional progression path, like they're just terrible because they didn't click immediately. And I think that McCaffrey runs in that type of situation where he just gets a little bit better every year, and then finds an opportunity and works his way onto the field, and he becomes a key contributor for Jane Daniels at quarterback.
And I think you make a good point too, where a lot of people are going to see Luke McCaffrey and see who his brother is and just assume like, oh, he's just going to be another shifty slot guy. But he's not. He is much more
No.
cut from the cloth of his dad. He is a 6'2" guy. He can go out there and he can play X receiver. So, not quite the same build as his brother. He is a taller guy who can play that outside receiver role. So that sets him up for a nice ceiling in this offense if Terry McLaurin has to miss. So, Jeff, I don't know about you, man, but training camp, I love it. Like, just you get all these curmudgeons that are just like, oh, you can't react to anything in the industry. And I hope that I never become that grizzled that I just don't enjoy seeing guys on a practice field doing football things for the first time in months. So I am ecstatic this week. It has been so much fun getting real NFL news, highlights, all this sort of stuff. Seems like the season is coming up very quickly. I am very, very excited and excited to have some actionable advice for what feels like the first time in months to give to the audience here. So we will be back later this week with the show. We've been doing a lot of player take episodes, of course, buys and sells and camp risers and whatnot. We're going to do a fun game theory episode. We're going to talk about some of the do's and don'ts in Dynasty. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can check that out. And then we'll also be back. Jeff and I are doing a live stream on Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be hosted over by our friends at the NFFC. Sorry, stumbled through that one a little bit. $350 buy-in into this league with a $250,000 prize up top. So we will be live streaming that. If you want to join, I will have the link in the description below. But thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you soon.